Well, hello. I'm so thrilled to be here today with Matt Rogers. He is an incredible person, and we share aquatics as a background. He's a little bit more accomplished than I am in the pool, I have to admit. But I'm so thrilled that you're here, Matt, talking about athletes and important things that athletes should know. At the college level, collegiate level, and then actually we're going to be kind of touching on a bunch of different things, all kinds of different levels of athletes. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Great, absolutely. No, I appreciate it. So I'll give you a quick intro.
Yeah.
Right now I'm a financial recruiter in New York City. I've been doing that for about 2.5 years after getting fully out of coaching and training. I had done, almost 20 years of all different levels from, age group to high school to masters, adults, and also ended my career doing college coaching as a head coach in Brooklyn for St. Joseph's College, which is a small D3 school, which was a great experience to end my career on. And
Mhm.
what I do now in financial services recruiting, I work with both graduate hires and experienced hires. But what I like to do also, I'm a part of some organizations from a volunteering perspective where we speak to college students at seminars. I'm a part of a scholarship foundation where we speak to students about what should they be doing in interviews, what should they be doing to prepare for interviews and applications. So those are some of the things that I work on besides, the hard skills or the hard day of what I do specifically for my job outside of that. It all ties
Yeah.
together, obviously, but those are sort of the things that I enjoy about my career shift, that I still get to help those individuals, who were in my past and in a situation that I'm quite familiar with. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm glad that we were able to chat a little bit today.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, and there's so much that I can ask you. But one of the things that we were talking about that I thought you had a lot of really good kind of information for athletes is kind of like what are some of the important things that athletes should be focused on now, perhaps at the collegiate level, what should they be doing to prepare for kind of post college
Sure.
transition.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things specifically to athletes, and I guess all this applies to everyone, but specifically to athletes, everything is put in front of them and they have a very structured system for,
Mhm.
everything from medical to training to practice to scheduling classes. They get first dibs on classes at
Mhm.
their school. So a lot of advantages are put in front of them, but as they get closer to graduation, although they have a lot of people, helping them in a highly structured environment, I don't think any amount of help can get rid of the fact that you have to do it yourself. So what are some tips and tricks? And I
Mhm.
have really come up with three things that you need to focus on. And the earlier you do these, I think the better. And that's kind of the theme of what I talk about. The earlier in your college career, the earlier, even as you're approaching college, you should decide on a college that might have a couple of things that you're interested in, right? Um,
Mhm.
so those three things come down to what's out there in the world of what people describe as passion, which is not descriptive enough for me.
Right.
So what do you like to do and enjoy to do? What do you value? And then number two is, what are you going to excel at? What's going to be something that you're good at? You don't have to be the best, but it's going to be a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable. You're going to stick with it for a much longer period of time
Right.
if you are good at it at some level, or if the skills that you have and your strengths, align with what you're going to have to be doing. And the third one is, what type of environment are you going to excel in?
Mm.
So is that an environment where there's a lot of critical thinking, analysis, mathematical work? What comes to mind would be, the hard finance analyst type of positions, accounting, finance, or, do you want to be in an environment in front of clients, negotiating, demonstrating value specifically, not behind the computer all day. Some of those jobs
Mhm.
involve a lot of travel. Maybe that's something you're interested in doing. which obviously has changed a little bit, but now it's coming back.
Right.
So, those are two extremes of the environment, but, you can find something in between as well. And that could mean location too. So a lot of people go to school far away from where they originally lived. Um,
Mhm.
maybe it's getting into an environment that you never had an opportunity to live in, whether it's weather or something like that. So when you have
Mhm.
that chance to make those decisions, those three factors I think are really important. And again, you might not know the answer to those. And if you get too close to the end, and you haven't thought about those factors, it's going to be very stressful. And you
Yeah.
don't want to get pushed into one of those, typical, I call it, athlete careers, just because those are the people looking for athletes on the other side, on my side of the table. So
Mhm.
don't get pulled to that if you don't know anything about it, or if you don't, you know, understand what that is, or you don't think you're going to enjoy it, because there's a lot of roles out there, such as sales, such as the financial world, that athletes get pulled to, just because they're looking for high quality individuals in a tough
Yeah.
environment. So make sure that that's for you, whatever decision you make. And again, the theme, I'm going to say it 100 times, is the earlier you ask people questions, the better, the better understanding you're going to have of it.
Yeah. Well, I love that. You said like what are you passionate about? And then your values, which obviously, I teach about this too, and how they're so intertwined, your passion and your values. And then also, what are you good at? And then the environment. Like, I think those are really like tangible things that people can start to think about. And even if, you just kind of get curious, perhaps ask people who know you well and that kind of thing. But I love that structure,
Mhm.
because I think when, as an athlete, as a college athlete specifically, I think it's easy sometimes to get caught up on just what you have right in front of you, versus really taking like a longer view. And so that's a really easy kind of like straightforward structure. So I
Mhm.
really love that. And I'm so glad that you were able to share that. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to add to it, again, really focus on asking people questions. So even the classes that you're taking, I usually say that or it's my observation that the business schools do a better job of this. There's generally a specific track or a
Mhm.
specific career, or in general, that they're moving towards, and they do a good job of that. A lot of the professionals in the industry and who are, teaching in the business schools, they're doing that part-time as an adjunct, and they're outside in that world, or maybe they
Mhm.
retired from that world. So those people are great people to ask questions of. In some of the more strictly academic type of roles, you
Mhm.
need to really be doing a lot more work of asking questions of, what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years when I start applying for roles. Am I going to like what I see? What are the areas I need to focus on? And also the other thing is, there's a lot of talk out there about, following your passion, doing something as a career that you
Mhm.
love. And I think it's sort of a dangerous game, because I don't think there's really anybody out there who loves what they do every single day, every single minute. They make a ton of money. They don't have everything. So don't, like, I try to tell younger people, don't expect everything. Because
Mhm.
there's going to be good and bad. That's all right. So
Mhm.
you could get into a career, like we were talking about location, um, before. You could get into a career that is in a location that you can do the recreational activities that you enjoy. You can
Mhm.
have a job that has a certain schedule, so you can do other things, join an organization, join a charity outside of work that's
Mhm.
important to you. So all of those things don't have to line up like your entire life through the job. Then you're getting into the difficulty that the athletes have when they finished.
Yep.
Everything was the sport, or everything was the team. And then it's when something's not good during that, there's a lot of issues, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, well, and I mean, based on kind of what I know of you, and you really do like walk the talk, which I think that's the best way to really teach too, is to really be a demonstration of, like living what you teach, and that's what you're doing. So, that's so powerful. And even with, like, I'm just thinking about what I do, and I absolutely love working with my athletes and coaching my athletes. And as an entrepreneur, there are some aspects of entrepreneurship that I am not 100% in love with, that I wish that I could outsource or whatever. So I love that kind of like making sure there, it's not like, sometimes it's a little diamond in the rough. It's not all just offered
Sure.
up right away. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
so yeah.
going past that, on that note, I want to ask you, what are some difficulties in the transition after school that you deal with on, transition into career? What are some of the, the obstacles that you see? Probably in that theme of, everything was the sport, um,
Hmm.
and now what? So, I definitely want to hear what you
Yeah.
think about that.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, I know that you've spoken to this too. I think one of the main things for me, that in my experience after college, I was uh, playing water polo at Purdue, and um, I remember like what that was like for me to know, like, this is my last game, and like I had like the foresight to know, like, I'm not going pro in this. And so for me, I was lucky in that I knew that there needed to be something else. And that's the part that I think kind of like ties in, can easily tie into like the identity piece. And as a licensed therapist for the past 20 plus years, and as a performance coach and transition coach now, I just think that that identity piece can be so challenging. And even if you think about, and I'm sure you see this all the time too, like in the corporate world, it's so easy as a business person to define yourself by what it is that you do,
Mhm.
when in reality, we are so much greater than that. So I think that's really the main thing, is kind of like that disillusionment, or like a pivot, let alone the logistics of, like you said, you have a set schedule, you've got places to be, people to like hold you accountable, and like kind of supporting you, have access to all these resources, and then all of a sudden none.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's the same thing for professional athletes as well, especially with the identity piece, and some based on where you are in your tenure with professional sport, or depending on what sport it is, you have access to some resources and sometimes not. So um, that resource piece and the identity piece, I think, are two major components. And the resource piece is one of the reasons why I really decided that this was something that I wanted to do, was to
Sure.
support athletes, and really supporting, in discovering, when you're talking about passion and your values, like when we look at who you are as a person. Sorry, I've been talking so much today, my mouth is dry. Um, excuse me. I really love to kind of go in and dial deep on what the values are. So, like, when you get to the core values, it gives you a framework for what your passion is, what you're good at. Because generally speaking, the things that you really value, you're going to go after. So, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Um, so yeah, so those are some of the main things. And I just feel like, I know the identity piece is just really difficult. And I mean, even, and I don't know how you kind of see this since you're an athlete as well, but like, there's definitely a huge part of me that's tied up in my identity as an athlete, for sure. So, kind of expanding that, and looking, for something larger. And like you're saying too, with the charity work, and just the opportunity to really like support other people, and reach out, causes. Maybe it is other athletes, maybe it's not, maybe it's animals or something like that, but just really having an opportunity to kind of shine the light of awareness on what might be seeking to emerge by means of your life. I think that that's a really a powerful piece when we're working with, looking at athlete identity, and how that could be kind of rocked when something is gone, planned or unplanned. Both of them, it doesn't matter.
Sure, sure. It could be an injury, could be anything, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yes.
it's interesting. So, I always get asked questions about that. And or about for myself. And I never really considered it. You know, I had a little bit of a different track. I started coaching while I was in college, and, you know, stayed a part of it in that regard. And,
Yeah.
you know, started working independently and was self-employed beside, you know, working for some teams. And it's all contract work in a non-revenue generating sport. You know, it's not, oh,
Right.
okay, I'm going to show up somewhere and, you know, it's a full-time job. It's not. You have a number of different things that you're involved in. And that's common with anybody, I think, who works in sports, you know,
Mm.
unless you're the basketball coach at UCLA or something like that. You know
Right.
what I mean? So I think
Yep.
that's the experience of a lot of people that stay in the business. But I think if you just, you know, I never really considered it a transition or anything like that. I mean, transitioning to the corporate world was a little more radical,
Mhm.
for sure. But I never really considered it. I just see the future, you know, sometimes to a detriment to myself. But so I'm really good at looking ahead, and I think that like freaks out a lot of people who are athletes.
Mm.
Because the whole focus and a lot of the training and a lot of the mental training that they talk about is very in the moment. Don't worry about the past, which is great advice, obviously. But don't
Yeah.
worry about the past. Like, live now, in the moment, so you can, you know, it's great for focus and performance. But I've always been, you know, I've always tried to motivate myself or incentivize myself by thinking like way down the line. But for
Mhm.
some people that works, for some people it doesn't. So I guess that's why my transition just kind of flowed. And, you know, I think giving up things is the hardest. But, you know, there were a lot of things that I gave up along the way that after I did it, I felt 100 times better.
But
You know what I mean? You think that it's going to
yeah.
be the worst thing in the world, but um, you know, once you get rid of that responsibility or stress, you're able to, you know, do other things more easily that move you ahead. So I mean, that was
Mhm.
kind of my experience with the transition through a number of a number of different phases. But I appreciate,
Yeah.
you know, I appreciate your insight on some of the difficulties to overcome, you know, whether it's someone who's a professional and is still, you know, in that, you know, out of that college environment, or if it's someone
Mhm.
who's literally in that early 20s transition out of that environment. But I appreciate it. I want to, you know, do you have any other questions for me, follow up on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about like you being able to kind of zoom out and see the future, I think that's just such a powerful piece. Then you're kind of sparking my idea. When I'm working with my clients, that's one of the things that we do is we craft a vision for not only like what you think you might be able to do, but what you would really, really love. And sometimes that's an exercise. Sometimes people don't really come to that with a lot of clarity right away. But you know, as you're saying, like I think there's a lot of value in that and being able to kind of like both and right, be in the moment and also be kind of, you know, knowing that this moment is going to last forever. So like, where are you going and where do you want to be in along the path that will give you, you know, give you life. And you know, I think Matt, you've obviously done such a great job at cultivating like different interests and different skills and um, you know, kind of combining them all into what it is that you're doing now. So just I really appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom and your experience with us.
Great, thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. It's excellent.
Awesome. Well, and if anyone wants to get in contact with you or ask you questions, what would be the best way to reach you?
Sure, I'll leave my LinkedIn information up here. It's the best way to
Okay.
get in contact with me. I'm on there
Awesome.
24/7, so happy to take messages on there if anybody wants to reach out, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your experience and your wisdom. So thank you for taking time and sharing that with me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.